through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Thanks.
Thank you, Pat. And let's continue with the serenity prayer for those who wish to join in. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. As Jim is my name, I'm an alcoholic, and to say it's an honor and a privilege is an understatement to have Dr. Ashish to talk to us today. He's from India. He's known nice in India or here as the Dr. SILKWORTH of India. And I would like to talk to him for the next hour about cricket, and I'm sure he'd love to talk about cricket as well, but we're not going to talk about cricket, even though he probably will mention Malahide, where the captain of the English team comes from, that won the World Cup. But we'll leave it at that, and I'm going to, without any ado, I'm just going to hand you over. He was an A trustee for AA way back, and I'm going to hand you over to Dr. Ashish, and this has been recorded for everybody, to share his AA experience and his amazing contribution to AA. God bless you. Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks, Jim. This is Dr. Ashish, and I'm a friend of Alcoholics Anonymous. Waiting for those highs, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me over here. And well, I was told the time of 7:30. My apologies if I have joined late, but I was given a time of 7:30. Well, for the next 40 minutes, 45 minutes, I'll be talking about my experiences with alcoholics, their disease, and how, obviously, you know better than me how AA has helped. But I would like to understand how I understand it has helped them. And that is where the medical science comes in. And I'll be sharing a few views which are my own. My beautiful fellowship has nothing to do with what I'm going to share with you right now. My first understanding of AA was when I was doing my post-graduation in psychological medicine in Mumbai. I read about AA as a short note for a 5-mark question in my examination paper. And that was it. I didn't have any idea about what it was. And I just knew that there was something called a 12-step program. As luck would have it, I landed up in mental health services and landed up in a de-addiction ward when I was doing my post-graduation. And that was the first time when I interacted with alcoholics. I had seen an alcoholic before in my life, right in my neighborhood where I lived, very close to the Mumbai airport. And I had some kind of a mixed feeling. I wanted to know why he fell down in the gutter very close to my house. And my mother tried to hush me up and said that, no, don't discuss it in front of him. I felt that she was a little scared of that person. That was my first interaction. I probably was in the early teens at that time. And I was told that one of my father's friends died of alcoholism when I was probably in my A-level in Mumbai. It is 12th standard. Apart from that, I had no experience of alcoholism. And when I landed up in the ward, patients were coming in. I was able to talk to them very well when they were not intoxicated. And that was a revelation, because in psychiatry ward, I couldn't talk to my patients as comfortably I was able to talk to my recovering friends. And that was what enthused me to talk at length with my friends in the de-addiction ward. And I gave it my best try. I tried to use whatever little I knew about relationships, whatever I knew about human emotions, which was very little in the second standard of my post-graduation. But I really tried hard to read about alcoholism. And after 6 months, I realized that most of the people with whom I had really put in a lot of work had relapsed. And I thought that, well, these people are not meant to recover. They don't want to recover. And I, somewhere in my mind, I vowed that this was the last I was ever going to enter the de-addiction ward. And I passed my exams, and because I had spent a lot of time in the ward, my head of the department, he felt that I was interested in de-addiction. And as a fourth year resident, that is after getting my degree, he posted me again back into the de-addiction ward. I pleaded. I said that I don't want to go there and meet those people who don't want to recover. And he said, no, you have to go because you have shown interest and you must go. And there I was in the ward again. And that I was there in the ward, the word spread. I don't know why, but the word spread because I had put in a lot of work when I was there for 6 months. And those patients whom I had given up on, and I had said that within probably a year or so they are going to die, they came there and they welcomed me with a happy face. Their families were happy and they were attributing their life to me. And I very well knew that it wasn't me that had helped them. So after that, the initial welcome was over. I just asked them, tell me frankly, what did you do differently than what I was trying to tell you? And all of them said that it was Alcoholics Anonymous. That is when my curious mind said that if these people are vouching for Alcoholics Anonymous, I must know what Alcoholics Anonymous is. And that was in 1992. And in October 1992, I attended my first meeting. I remember it because 1st of October is my birthday. And it was around that time that I attended my first meeting. And I think I got the best birthday present ever in my life. Because since then, I have been associated with Alcoholics Anonymous. I have seen number of people, thousands of people recovering with the help of the 12-step program and the meetings and whatever that happens in the meetings. And whenever I would talk to my colleagues and tell them that, well, I know that this is working, but in the scientific literature, I wouldn't get any content to prove or say that. And you know that the medical fraternity works on evidence-based interventions. They want statistical studies to prove that something is working or not. And my argument was that before even Newton, found out gravity, the apples used to fall down. Okay, so that the apple falls down, the reason the science was able to give, but the fact that apples fall down was accepted by human beings. And that's what I wanted to tell them, that people recover with this program is something that I have witnessed. You just have to keep your mind, eyes, and ears open, and you see that. So when I landed up again in the de-addiction ward and I started reading about Alcoholics Anonymous and started reading about neurosciences, I gathered some information. And then for the last nearly 30 years, I have been working with the fellowship. Sometimes when I talk, people feel that I am a member. Well, I am a member, but I am a class A. Whether it's a blessing or I don't know, but I have been showered with a lot of love. And that's where comparison with Dr. SILKWORTH comes. I take it extremely modestly. And obviously, I'm happy to have been mentioned with his name. Well, it's a pleasure to be invited by the end user. I call it an end user beyond my country. And I owe it to my fellowship who has literally 12-stepped me to understand what 12-step program is and how it can be taken to people. And I dedicate this invitation, which I've said, I've told Bruce that I consider this as a milestone. And it's the same way as I became a Class A trustee at that time, becoming a Class A trustee of Alcoholics Anonymous was not something people would vie for. But 6 years that I was a Class A trustee, with the fellowship, we were able to do so many things for the suffering alcoholics in India that now people seek to be a Class A trustee. And I was responsible, or with Pushan, I saw Pushan somewhere, we were responsible for 12-stepping Class A trustees so that they understand what the fellowship is. So I will share my views on the disease, which I again reiterate that they are my own views. And I'm responsible for that, not this fellowship should not be taken responsible for whatever views that I share. Well, we all accept that it's a disease, and we know that it's a disease of the mind or the brain. Well, for a long time, humanity has known about the effects of alcohol, and that's the reason people have been consuming alcohol for recreational use. But right from Vedas to the alchemist knew that in some people it brings the devil. In fact, the word alcohol, from which the word alcohol comes up, is mascara of life. Koyol or kajal is mascara of life. And when it is boiled, the essence of alcohol evaporates. And that's how it was called alcohol, and that became alcohol. In the same book, okay, written by Rosé, mentions that in some people, for some reasons, it brings the devil. For a long time, science did not know how it brings the devil out. Now we know that there is a protein in the brain, which is very similar to a protein that is found in a fly called Drosophila. And the alcohol molecule gets entangled into that amino acid bundle. And that amino acid bundle with the alcohol attached goes towards the cell. And the cell has, if you know, that there are some receptors which are transmembrane. So it's like a pipe which goes through the cell membrane. And there is an external part, there is a middle part, and there is an internal part. And what it does is basically chokes the entry of these receptors, and that's how the cell function changes. And when the cell function changes, the neurotransmitters that are produced by the cell, they get altered. And once the neurotransmitters get altered, the mechanisms, the functions of the cell, they get altered. The proteins are formed which are different from what were being formed before. And that is how gradually the brain starts working differently. The brain has different regions, region for thinking, feeling, and behavior. And when thinking, feeling, and behavior regions are affected, the repercussions are seen in the exterior. And people start feeling that why is this person thinking this way? Why is this person feeling this way? And why is this person behaving this way? So we know that the science has filled in the gaps of understanding why a person behaves differently. Now, we all know that in diabetes, the area of the body which is dysfunctional is the pancreas. For a long time, we did not know what was going wrong with addiction. And now we know that there is an area which is exactly at a junction of, if I put a pin right in front, above my ear, my eye and my ears, the place where they would join inside my brain, that area is called ventral tegmental area or nucleus accumbens. Now, this area is the place where things go wrong. Do they go wrong in all the people? No, about 3 to 8% of people have this abnormality where that area starts behaving little differently. So this area is ventral tegmental area or nucleus accumbens. Now, is that the only area where alcohol goes? No, alcohol goes in the whole brain. Alcohol has been called as mother of all drugs. Now, why is it called mother of all drugs? Because it acts on the opioid receptors. So it acts on the same receptors that probably heroin acts. It acts on the cannabinoid receptors, that is, well, receptors where cannabis act. It acts on the glutamate receptors, which are the most populated receptors in the brain, which are inhibitory. And the GABAergic receptors, which are very much responsible for calming us down or giving us good sleep, or where the sleeping pills act. So alcohol seems to act on all these four receptors, but yet we did not know, just like we knew that there is something called opioid receptors, cannabis receptors, but science was not able to find alcohol receptor at all. Even today, we feel that probably alcohol receptor is non-existent. What it does is that it utilizes all the other receptors in order to bring its action. And that is why it is called the mother of all the psychoactive substances. Now, for each individual, it is possible that alcohol would act on one particular receptor system preferentially. So it is possible that one person would have more effect on the opioid receptors, enkephalins, okay, or endorphins. Some other person would have more effect on dopaminergic system, which is mediated through other receptor systems. So it is possible that each individual would have preferential response, which is different from the others. And that's the reason why, though all alcoholics are similar, some alcoholics have severe withdrawals, some alcoholics have not so severe withdrawals. Some people would have impulsive relapses. Some people would have denial, complete denial. And that's the reason why these even in spite of having a similar pattern of progress, each alcoholic seems to be different. Now, when I say the progress of the disease, we have found that there are certain stages through which an alcoholic goes. And the first stage is the first time the person experiences alcohol, he doesn't wish to be an alcoholic. Okay, nobody wishes. Okay, so first time when I had a pastry, at that time I never wished that one day I have to become a diabetic. So similarly, when you have alcohol for the first time, you want to enjoy it the way the whole world enjoys. But with the first sip in the ventral tegmental area and the nucleus accumbens, some small changes start happening. And these small changes are very, very micro changes, and which are not visible, which are not understood, very difficult to find out whether they are happening or not. But with each exposure, the changes in the ventral tegmental area keep on increasing. And when there is a frequent repeated exposure, after a while, the changes become so very prominent that they start affecting the whole brain. Now, it is not only that this area changes. While this area is changing, because of its connections with other areas of the brain, the other areas are also changing. And these changes which happen bring about a symptom complex, which is very commonly seen. So we have an exposure, the first exposure, then there are frequent exposures because the person wants to repeat the experience. With repeated exposure, what happens is that the same amount does not give the person the kind of pleasure that he has remembered he could get, and he starts increasing the amounts that he wants to consume so that he keeps getting the same pleasure. We call it tolerance. And as it is happening, finally, a level reaches where you can't go any further. And then suddenly, if you don't drink, then you start having a negative effect. You start feeling restless, you start feeling not able to concentrate, whatever it is. And we call that he has gone into a stage of negative effect. So first is binging and intoxication. The second is negative effect. Now, both these experiences are remembered by our memory. And the person knows that if I drink this, I'm good. if I don't drink this, I'm bad. I don't want to be bad. So in order to avoid feeling bad, he starts planning and scheming. How am I going to get this evening's alcohol? That is where the preoccupation starts shaping up. So there is preoccupation and planning because he doesn't want the bad thing, and he wants to feel good. He wants to feel comfortable. So he keeps consuming now, and he starts planning and scheming and choosing his opportunities. So if there are opportunities for an evening party, he will ask which party has drinks free and which party I'll have to buy drinks. So he would rather go to a place where there are free drinks. And if there is a choice between a party where drinks are served and party where drinks are not served, he would find some reason to go to the party where drinks are served. That's how gradually he starts choosing group of friends wherein chance of getting alcohol starts increasing. And that's what when we say that there is a social drift. Okay, the person starts going away from people who do not consume or consume moderately, but he starts preferring people who are consuming heavily. So he starts choosing situations, places where the likelihood of getting alcohol increases. And that is when the society starts feeling that something is wrong with this guy because he is not coming with us. The social deterioration starts happening. Now, when these things are happening, the person is not aware. And the person is not aware because alcohol is acting on a system called cannabinoid system. I was just talking about it, that alcohol acts on the cannabis system. Now, I don't know, but if you have consumed cannabis, one of the symptoms of cannabis consumption is that the person loses track of time. So his orientation to time changes. So the time that he spends, he might keep doing something repeatedly. So the perception of time is distorted. Now, in our brain, for orientation of time, this area of the brain is associated with the orientation of time, place, and person. So these are adjoining. So these are neighbors. Okay? And so when the cannabinoid system is excessively stimulated, the person starts getting disoriented with time, place, and person. There are cases where the person can lose track of himself, but still he is not intoxicated. Okay, many a times it is seen as a blackout. Okay, so the person is moving around absolutely comfortably, but he has no recollection the next morning what he did and how he moved around and how he reached his home. So this blackout also happens because of a temporary disconnection that happens from perception of self. So if you extrapolate these ideas and see that if a person can lose track of having an insight into his own being, well, the person may not understand that something is going wrong. Now with cannabis, it happens temporarily in intoxication. But with regular consumption, regular upgradation of cannabinoid systems, it can happen for a particularly long time. And that is what we say now is denial. Lack of insight into what is happening to his life because of his consumption of alcohol. He's not crazy. He's not a bad person. But it is just that his cannabinoid systems are so affected that he is behaving as if the cannabinoid system is at overwork. And when the cannabinoid systems are overworked, the person doesn't understand what he is doing with his life. Well, we say that, that person has not yet got the message, and that's the reason why he would not recover when the cannabinoid system is high. But friends, somewhere the cannabinoid system in each individual has a limit, has a ceiling. Okay, so once that ceiling is reached, okay, after that, there are no more cannabinoid upheavals that the brain can accept. And then somewhere the whole system starts getting corrected. Now, this correction happens because the person is aware of whatever is happening in his life, but the cannabinoid system was not allowing that person to become aware. As the rock bottom, as the social deterioration, the spiritual deterioration, the biological deterioration started growing, the cannabinoid system started falling short of covering up all the damage that the person was seeing. And that is when we say that, okay, the rock bottom has reached and now the person wants to change. Now, when the person wants to change, we say that, yeah, you need to accept that you are powerless, okay? And you need to accept that your life has become unmanageable. The person who consumes alcohol, whenever he is reminded that his alcohol is a problem, he flares. He says, no, alcohol is not right. Alcohol is your problem. It's not my problem. I know how to consume. I have been consuming it for years together, and I drink of my own money. You don't have to tell me anything. But when it keeps increasing, the person starts understanding, because of whatever is happening in front of him, that something is wrong, something needs to be done. This happens with the shrinking effect of cannabinoid system. And when this cannabinoid system starts shrinking, we have a situation where the person starts seeking what is obvious. Now, seeking what is obvious, okay, you can say that it is truth. He knows, she knows that if he or she were to continue doing what she was doing, it's not going to lead that person anywhere. That is when the person starts seeking help. But by that time, the brain has gone into complete disarray and the person's thinking, feeling, behavior has been affected. So the person is not able to garner all the energies together. So those people who are have a little bit understanding of physics can understand that all the vectors need to be aligned. If they are in different directions, well, the outcome is not going to be good. So the vectors to be aligned, they need to discipline their mind, and the discipline has never been a forte for a person who is consuming like a fish. And that's the reason why, to align those vectors, the person has to take help from some place, not within. And that is where we start externalizing the help. And for that externalizing, we say that, well, something, some power higher than you needs to find a way to your mind and heart so that it might align those vectors. Well, some of my patients who have been educated and find it very difficult to accept the concept of God or some concept of surrender. And I always tell them that, well, you have tried everything and it has not worked. So there is something that you need to know, which probably you don't know and somebody else knows. So, well, you need to learn from that person how he managed something that you don't know. And if in spite of your efforts, you can't do anything, then obviously you need to find some power higher than you who would give you that instruction to do something about your life. Now, how these things work? Okay, let me just go back towards the disease and tell you how the person is led into this particular phase and why the other steps that we have where we have we try to make amends and how do they work. I always give this example. I am a foodie, and I always give this example that if you are in a buffet and there is Thai menu on the buffet, and there is a prawn curry, okay, red prawn curry, Thai red prawn curry, and in the curry there are shrimps and there are tiger prawns. Now this is a peculiar thing. You have shrimps as well as tiger prawns. Now people want to have the curry, but they want to have the shrimps and the prawns also. And they would specifically go for the tiger prawns, obvious, right? So when you are getting at a buffet and taking the prawn curry, you want to take the shrimps, the curry, and the tiger prawns together, but you would preferentially go for tiger prawns. Something similar happens in our brain. The dopaminergic system. The dopaminergic system, which gives us the stimulation in the brain, that's the reason why the whole world consumes alcohol. Now, what happens differently in a social drinker and an alcoholic, I would try to explain with the help of the Thai prawn curry. When I consume alcohol, suddenly in the pot of Thai curry, the shrimps and the prawns, they increase in number. Dopaminergic system receptor 1 and dopaminergic system receptor 2. So D1 and D2. So imagine D1 to be shrimps and D2 to be the tiger prawns. When I consume alcohol, D1 and D2, both of them go up. And when I sober up in the morning, both these levels come down. When I repeatedly consume, then what happens is that with each consumption, the D1, D2s go up, go down, go up, go down. But with frequent consumption, the D1 levels start going so below than the normal level that I had when I started consuming alcohol. So then it appears to me that nothing seems to pleasure me. The only thing that pleasures me is consumption of alcohol. So the flowers don't mean anything to me. The fruits, the nature, the friends, the family, nothing keeps releasing the dopaminergic receptors. But I get pleasure only with the substance which releases the dopamine in the brain. Now, when I consume alcohol, when the dopaminergic system is down, suddenly there is a gush, and that is where the reward comes in. With repeated consumption, the D2 receptors start becoming very, very infrequently stimulated. So over a period of years, the dopaminergic system is unable to give you pleasure. And this dopaminergic system, which is unable to give you pleasure or give you pleasure only when excited with alcohol, starts looking for alcohol all the time. When the dopaminergic system, suppose we have 50 people for a buffet and suddenly 25 people increase, the chef would have to probably increase the amount of Thai curry. So he would have to buy prawns and the shrimps, and he would put them, maybe a kilo of prawns or 2 kgs of prawns, whatever it is. But he has to increase the salt also. Now, salt cannot be 2 kgs of salt for 2 kgs of prawns. So you could have two spoonfuls of salt. Okay. So when the dopaminergic system goes up, the salt in the curry also has to increase. And this salt is glutamate system. Now, this glutamate system does not increase proportionately. That is 2 kgs for 2 kgs, but 2 kgs and 1 teaspoon. So it's a small change which happens in the ventral tegmental area and the nucleus accumbens. The difference is that the prawns go away, but the salt remains in the curry. And with each drop of prawns, increment of prawns, the salt keeps on increasing to such an extent that one time comes when the salt becomes too much. And now that curry is too salty. You cannot consume it. So you have to add prawns to it in order to make it edible. Now that is what happens in the glutamate, in the ventral tegmental area. When the salt starts increasing, they start demanding the curry because now the brain has become too salty. That is how the craving comes in, because the brain knows that the only thing that can probably reduce the saltiness in the brain is addition of dopamine. And how do I add the dopamines? The brain knows the only way to add dopamines is consuming alcohol. So that is how craving comes in. Now this craving, now you understand that the well, the salt has increased. And when the person comes into recovery, he stops consuming alcohol. He wants to know how he wants to get away from alcohol. The brain is salty. The dopamine levels have gone down. There are no shrimps and prawns in the brain. But the salt has increased. It has never come down. It will never come down. So when the salt is there, well, he is dissatisfied because life is not good when it is salty. So the dissatisfaction with not having alcohol in his life is not a good feeling. And that's why we call it dissatisfaction with sobriety. And 99% of relapses would happen with dissatisfaction with sobriety. So actually what is happening is that the glutamate levels have gone up. They are demanding dopamine. But dopamine is only available if the person drinks alcohol. And that is the reason why the person becomes vulnerable to relapses. Because every time he consumes or he sees around, he goes to situations, places, and meets persons who remind him of that beautiful prawn curry. He understands how salty his life has turned out to be. And that is the reason he becomes vulnerable to relapses. So when he becomes vulnerable, he keeps falling down every time and then he starts losing confidence in himself. As this progress is happening, depending upon how far the GABAergic system, okay, the system that gives you nice sleep in the night, that system gets affected. So there is upliftment of GABA. So the person starts requiring that GABAergic effect in order to sleep. And that's the reason why when people who consume alcohol, they stop consuming alcohol, they don't sleep well. 85% of people, they recover in 1 month time. The reason is that all the sleep initiating mechanisms are hijacked by alcohol. So the mechanisms are in place, but there is a big lock on the production of chemicals which are required. The brain says that why do I put in so much of effort? Let alcohol come in. Alcohol has taken over all the sleep mechanism, the mother of sleep. So let it do, it's a shortcut. So the brain says that not going to create. Why create thousands of chemicals for sleep? So it says that shut up, shut all the mechanisms of producing the sleep chemicals. Let alcohol do its job. When the person does not drink for a month or so, the brain starts wondering, this person seems to have changed. He's not giving us alcohol to sleep. Now I better open the mechanisms. I don't see any other resort. And that is the reason why in the first 1 month, one should not take any sleeping pills. After the withdrawal symptoms, the person should not take any sleeping pills so that the natural mechanisms will open up and will start 85% of times, it will put him to sleep. Now, once the GABAergic system smoothens out, the dopaminergic system is yet not working well. The life is still salty. And that is the time the person starts going to the meetings. And when he's in the meetings, initially, the person feels on the top of the world. For a long time, the person has not been able to be sober. And in the meetings, he finds something, he gets connected with something, and he sees that something that was evading him for such a long time, he seems to have gotten it. And he starts feeling, now I can do anything. He wants to see that he is sober. He sees a smile on his wife's face, children's face. He himself is happy with whatever he has achieved. There is a risk that he might become overconfident. It is said that, they start working that whatever they have lost in their lives, they want to make up for it. And they say that, well, I have recovered. I know that I am okay. I can be away from alcohol. Now I have to focus on my life. My colleagues, friends have gone so far ahead. I need to catch up. We live only once. And that is where he disconnects from Alcoholics Anonymous or the meetings and tries to focus on the drinks, on his work. And when he's working, something goes amiss. Because this disease is so difficult to manage. It is so confusing. confounding that it has its own ways. Even when alcohol is not there in that person's brain for even 3 months, 1 year, 3 years, 10 years, it is still working in the mind because the glutamate systems never go down. And that's the reason many a times we keep saying that once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Because all the mechanisms that have led to this glutamatergic facilitation, as we call it in psychological terms, this is permanent. And this permanency makes a person vulnerable. And every time there is an exposure, the whole gamut of phenomena that have happened in the past are likely to repeat. And they would not take such a long time. They would happen very drastically because the gap in the wound is there. So the blood is going to gush out like anything, and is very soon, within a few days or weeks, the person, or if not moments, the person is going to land up. And that is what Alcoholics Anonymous said, that is an allergy. So you have to keep yourself away from the first drink that you have to from after you have sobered up. Now, in order to live a life, we need to be happy. We are called hedonistic people. Okay, we are pleasure seeking, and whenever we want to make something out of our lives, add some meaning to it, we need a purpose. We need a pleasure in achieving that goal. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, they say that, well, you are always recovering. You've never recovered. So a person who joins alcoholics wants to know that, okay, when is my treatment going to get over? And he's told that 90 meetings, 90 days. Okay. Well, why 90 meetings? Why 90 days? Well, the most common, the most number of relapses happen in the first 90 days. It's not, and it's known beyond Alcoholics Anonymous that 90 days is something to do with human behavior. And that's the reason why in English it's said that 30 days makes a habit and 90 days makes a lifestyle. So 90 days do mean something if you discipline yourself in order to maintain some kind of behaviors later. So 90 days is not an arbitrary number. Okay, it is known that 90 days does something. We don't know what it does, but it certainly does something. And that's the reason why 90 days are important in doing the meetings. Coming back to the dopaminergic system, because recovery, I believe, completely depends on the dopaminergic system. The reason why I say that is that unless the person starts experiencing pleasure without alcohol, is able to enjoy life without alcohol, his recovery is always going to be fragile. Then it's just waiting for that particular moment where the apple cart is going to be shaken and the person is going to take drugs or take alcohol. So it is imperative that the person starts experiencing pleasure in his recovery. And that is where our fourth, fifth steps come into the play, where the person starts finding out what are the mistakes that I have committed, what are the amends that I need to make. Now, what are the simple things that give us pleasure? It is our family, it is our friends. We need to keep them happy, and then we are happy. Well, millionaires go through divorces, so it's not the money that makes us happy. It's the closeness of our relationships, and that is where the 12-step program starts bringing about a therapy in psychiatry, which is called exposure and relapse prevention. Now, human species has known only two ways of relieving stress. Okay, two ways of relieving any kind of anxiety. One is exposure and relapse prevention. That is expose yourself to the fears that you have. Okay, and gradually see the fear going down. Suppose there is a child of 5 years, you want to teach him swimming, okay, and he's scared of going into the pool. So what do? Okay, you just tell him how to swim and everything. You give him a floater and everything. You go with him in the swimming pool. But finally, someday he's going to swim alone and he's going to swim without a float. Now, in that situation, if you need to bring him there, there is a gradual program of easing him of his anxiety. It can't happen with you and him sitting on the sides of a pool. It has to happen. You have to get the boy into water. So that is exposure and response prevention. Bring him to water, take him to water, but prevent the anxiety response that he is creating. And the second technique is distraction. So when we go on holidays, that is what we are using. So when I went to Malahide for the WSM meeting, well, that was distraction from my daily work. And that's the reason why holidays are good for our stress. So distraction is totally going away from your daily rigors of your life. That is distraction. So these are the only two techniques. Now, in Alcoholics Anonymous, in the 12-step program, what we say is make a list of all the wrongs that you have done. And one by one, start correcting them. As long as it's not going to hurt or harm somebody, it's your responsibility to bring about a change in the way you cope with difficult situations. In the past, we have tried to run away from those difficult situations. How? We wanted to numb ourselves. Any kind of distress would increase the salt in the brain and would demand dopaminergic input. But now, in recovery, what we are saying is, take the bull by its horn. If my problems with my ex-girlfriend are making me unhappy or probably giving me guilt, I need to go and talk to her. If she allows, I will have to talk to her and own up whatever wrongs that I have done. And when I own up, okay, there is a gush of dopamine. Because when I accept my mistake, it's the monkey is off my head. When the monkey is off my head, the feeling that you have, the feeling of relief that I don't have to hide anything, I don't have to cheat on anything, I don't have to tell lies to anybody, that relief itself starts releasing dopamine. And as those dopamines keep being released, the mind starts becoming more and more content. The keenness that you show in correcting the wrongs that you have done in the past is the essence of the profound personality change. Because what it gives you strength for is that you start understanding that to err is human, okay? But never ever forget that any mistake that you do can be corrected. So you don't have to take resort to some external substance to calm you down. And that is where the profound personality change starts happening, because now you don't react impulsively, but you are thinking about the consequences of your actions. And when you are thinking about the consequences of your actions, then whatever reactions that you have are thoughtful reactions, whether you are thinking about your own life or you are thinking about somebody else. So the person who has gone through the rigmarole of 12-step programs becomes a sponsor. The person takes people who are going through that program for a 12-step call. Why are sponsorships and the 12-step call essential part of own recovery? We say that it's for my recovery that I'm doing everything that I'm doing. The reason is that the person who is suffering and you are trying to convince is not a patient, but is a mirror. He is showing you what you were once upon a time. It reminds you that you have not recovered, but you are still recovering. And if you don't keep yourself from that one sip, then you will be in his shoes and somebody else would have to talk to you. So that is a continued process that we have. Then there are review meetings because, well, it's a process and there is nothing like perfection. Even if you have done the 12-step program once, you need to keep doing it in order to keep enjoying it. So this is something that works very well. Does it work only with alcoholics? Well, I can share here that I have benefited from the 12-step program. I'm not an alcoholic as of now, but I believe that it helps to engage yourself in public life uh, much better. I'm not advocating Alcoholics Anonymous for people who don't have the disease of alcoholism. But what I'm saying is that this is my personal experience, that it helps in your public engagement, your interactions, your family relationships in multiple ways. Well, does it help as well in other addictions? As a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't have an opinion. But as a man of science and a psychiatrist, I have seen that there are some nuances in each addiction. With Narcotic Anonymous, I have seen that the age group of people who engage in the fellowship is younger, at least in India, it is younger, and they are too emotional. And the flavor that it gives to the 12-step is little different from what I have seen in Alcoholics Anonymous. In Gamblers Anonymous and Nicotine Anonymous, we have groups in India which have now initiated, they have registered their body, but yet the group strength is not big enough for the group effect to maximize. So this is my learning of Alcoholics Anonymous, the alcoholism, and the wonderful fellowship which is doing excellent work the world over. Thank you again for inviting me here, and it has been a pleasure sharing whatever little I know with all you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you on behalf of everybody here. It's just brilliant listening to you again. And I don't know if anybody has any, anybody can come in and ask any questions around the next 5 minutes, and I'm sure the doctor will be more than pleased just to answer for the next 5 minutes or so. Sorry, anybody who wants to unmute and ask questions.
Hi,
Doctor.
You have a hand up, Jim.
Sorry, Jay.
Yes, Jay?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much, Doctor. I'm Jay. I'm a grateful alcoholic and also a retired MD. So I was curious about your point about the dopamine release when we take a confession in the 4th and 5th step. Is that what you were implying?
Yes, when you make amends and you start acting on these amends, not just the listing, but when you start interacting with people with whom you have wronged, I've seen that, one of the persons that I toured around in India, he was the chairman of Alcoholics Anonymous India. And we were visiting a city in North, and he said that I would be gone for about 2 hours. And I was wondering where he was going, and he didn't say anything. And I didn't ask because he looked a little serious, and I knew that he was up to something. So he went and he came back in 2 hours, and he said, Doc, let's have a party tonight. I said, what happened? So he said, okay, I'll tell you. So over a dinner, he just said that, well, this was my last amend that I had to make. He was on the list. He had some 20 years back, he had done something. He didn't share what he had done, but 20 years back, he had done something which he wanted to correct, but he did not have the opportunity to go to that city. And he was so happy. He was so happy that he had brought about that change. And then when I read about the dopaminergic system literature, that it is the morality, okay, is something so close to our heart that anything immoral, okay, hurts us, okay. And by nature, we are supposed to be good people. All of us are supposed to be good people. So we know that when we are immoral, we know that what we are doing is not wrong. It's usually the compulsions that make us behave in a wrong way. So So when you correct whatever wrong that you have done, I can vouch that I have felt happy whenever I have corrected myself. Okay, so I'm sure that there is a dopamine release phenomenon, and that dopamine release, when you list it, okay, it's like completion of taking off your checklist. Okay, so that itself gives you pleasure, right? You sleep well when you have finished all the agenda that you planned for the day. You sleep well. So yes, I do agree that it must be releasing dopaminergic in the brain.
Well, I appreciate that. I also am blessed to teach meditation. And one of the things I'm curious about is if your belief that the amygdala and the hippocampus improve their functionality as a result of meditation, as the MRI science suggests. Do you concur with that?
Yes, yes. I always say that in our brain, there is a hypothalamo-pituitary axis, okay, which is an interface between the thought process and the chemical reactions in the body. So hypothalamo-pituitary axis releases the hormones, okay, all the hormones are released by the hypothalamo-pituitary axis. This hypothalamo-pituitary axis is associated with the nervous part, okay. Now that makes us angry or scared, okay, that's locus ceruleus. And this locus ceruleus and hypothalamo-pituitary axis is associated with our frontal lobe, which is the planning brain. And these three areas of the brain decide everything that happens in our thought, feeling, and behavior. So as you rightly said, yes, hypothalamo-pituitary axis, locus ceruleus, amygdala. Amygdala is for memory, okay, emotional. All kinds of emotional memories are just stuck there. And they can be used for good reasons as well as for they can haunt you because of the bad memories that we have.
Thank you very much.
Kate is in next, has a question, please.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Ashish. I really, really enjoyed your talk. I sent you a private message in chat. I don't know whether you got it.
Okay, just a second. I was engrossed in talking to you guys. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Yes, I just would love you to be able to. I don't know if you can, but I would love you to come and speak at my home group sometime. Anyway, you have my email address there, and
Sure.
I've been so looking forward to hearing you. I kind of slightly manipulated things with work and got the day off so I could come and hear you. So it was well worth it. Thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed it. It was wonderful. Thank you. And thank you, Bruce, for organizing it.
Thank you, Kathy. Laura.
Yeah, thanks, Doctor. You might have even answered this. Just to say, it was amazing listening to you. I've so many questions actually. But one was just for example, like my dad would have always said, you would have been, there would have been nothing wrong with you, Laura, if you had never ever drank. And I always kind of maintained that alcohol saved me for a period of time, because when I started drinking first, it was like a medication, because, and I don't know really much about the scientific part of it with the dopamine and all of that, but I do know that from a very young age, I was very young, or I was very low, and I suffered an awful lot of anxiety. And I always have that question as to, I know I'm an alcoholic. I don't know what, I think you might be able to get my drift. I'm a little bit nervous because there's so many people on, but it was just one of the questions, that just if you could throw some light. I don't know, and you probably did even answer that. It's just that thing of, because alcohol, is just a substance. It's just a liquid, really, that I used that as a medication. So I don't even know what my question now was, but it's basically, I often wondered, like if I wasn't alcohol was never invented, do you know, how would I have maybe managed for a certain period in my life? And I know that might sound like, oh, Jesus, it sounds like a very stupid question, possibly.
No.
But it's just something I've always struggled with. You know, especially when it comes to kind of the mental health part of it, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's all really.
Yeah, I get your question. Thank you, Laura, for asking. And it certainly is not a stupid question. So I don't think you should consider that as a stupid question. Well, there are some unfortunate people who have had a difficult life right from the childhood. What happens is that in our genes, they decide, basically genes are the blueprint of our life. And if the genes are a little odd, then we have difficult issues. Some people have mental subnormalities, some people have cancers, some people have heart ailments. So we know that there is some genes which are responsible for dopaminergic systems and serotonergic systems in the brain. Especially these two systems, when are faulty, they are not able to create feeling of satiety in the brain. And when they are not able to create satiety in the brain, then the person, whether it's the chicken or the eggs first, you know, whether the life circumstances that they go through are bad, or genetically they keep landing into bad situations. Okay? We don't know exactly which one happens first, or it could be both. We call it epigenetic, so environment affecting our genes. And when that happens, the person goes through sadness, inability to enjoy, inability to achieve in the ages when you are actually supposed to be flooding with exuberance. The young age, the youth, and it somewhere along that time, you happen to get in touch with alcohol, and it bypasses the genetic mechanisms and releases those dopamines and serotonins in the brain. And when you have it for the first time, these people have told me that our life was very, very bad. It wasn't happy at all. But when alcohol came to my life, I really started becoming myself. Okay, they started feeling good about themselves. And well, obviously, who wouldn't want to feel good? If you have not experienced happiness at all, and you drink alcohol, and for the first time you understand, oh my God, this can happen to me. You want to repeat it. Okay, but that's the trap here. If there is a medicine that can be concocted from alcohol, which can be used without the side effects, then that would be the ideal thing. Okay, and that is where the research is going. But as of now, we are hundreds of years away from that research. You might have heard, Laura, that cannabis are being used in medical literature to treat terminal pain of cancers and resistant depressions. Okay, so the reason why, but it's not that the cannabis as we find them in cannabis indica or cannabis sativa. There are hundreds of cannabinoids in the weed or marijuana that you get. Of those, probably 2 or 3 have medicinal value. So those 2-3 have to be extracted from this 90 cannabinoid bouquet of cannabinoids. So when you extract them, yes, they would be available in a pill, and they can be consumed as medicine in terminal cancer patients for treating their pain, relieving them of their pain, and treating resistant depression. The problem is that once alcohol goes into the body, it gives you the pleasure, but it doesn't announce the trap that it is laying down. Okay, and that is the misfortune. So what you say is that initially it worked as a medicine for you. Okay, I empathize with it. I have seen so many people who have done it. But the problem is that the cure is bad and worse than the disease. Okay, so it doesn't continue to give you pleasure. Okay, the treatment with alcohol doesn't continue to give you pleasure. It starts harming you more in later years because of the addiction and the associated complications.
Thank you, Doctor. The last hand is up is Katie.
Hello, thank you. I'm Kay. I'm an alcoholic. That was
Hi, Kay.
fantastic. Hi, I really enjoyed that. I'm a
Thank
lay
you.
person, so I don't have any medical or scientific knowledge, but I'm really interested. And you know, you really described my disease. So you talked about the cannabinoid receptors having a ceiling. Now, would that explain, and I'm sure you've answered this already, but in simple terms, please, would that explain why when I got to about 28, it was as if the alcohol stopped working for me and I turned to heavy opioid drugs? I had to use those to give me that sort of same level of being sated. Could you explain that a bit for me, please?
Well, I'll try to, Kay, because well, medical science doesn't know everything about brain. And as Einstein put it, if you know everything about brain, human species would not have any problem in this world. All the problems in the world would be solved if once we know our own brain. But the answer to your question is that chemicals which give satiety in the brain, okay, one is dopamine, the other is endorphin, third is serotonin, and to a small extent norepinephrine. So these are the chemicals that we know are responsible for making you feel satisfied with anything and everything. Now, with alcohol, we know that the dopaminergic system and the enkephalin system, that is nothing but the opioid system in the brain. So in actuality, opium is being secreted in the brain every time I consume opioid drugs or maybe heroin or morphine or even alcohol. Okay, we call it endogenous opioid because it is produced inside the brain. Now, as I said, that there is a variability of response in each and every one of us. Okay, so it's possible that some of you might like tiramisu, and I would like probably plain simple custard. Okay, so why is it different? Because the satiety chemicals released in your brain because of tiramisu are more than what they are secreted in my brain. And with simple custard, they are released more in my brain. That's why my preference is to that custard. So coming back to your question, when alcohol is consumed, imagine a situation where in my brain, the dopaminergic system is more efficiently stimulated. But each one of our brains has a limitation. Okay, so it's something like, suppose you start jogging. Many of you might be avid runners, and well, you could run probably a half a marathon. But for me to run half a marathon, I would have to really work hard towards it. And at the same time, I would probably say, no, 10 kilometers is sufficient. I would not want to go ahead. So this limitation is a physical limitation. So similarly, there is a physical limitation for each and every sensation. So for instance, how much spicy food can you eat? Okay, come to our continent and they would eat a lot of spicy food. Okay, so it is possible that if you see that spicy food, you will sweat. Okay, so for each sensation, for pain sensation, okay, there are some people who can bear a lot of pain. There are some people who probably would scream at the sight of a injection. So in our brain, with alcohol exposure, imagine a situation where one particular system is stimulated. So let's say dopaminergic system is stimulated. You keep on increasing the amounts in order to get the levels high and high, but there is a limitation to which the dopaminergic system can be stretched. Once you reach that dopaminergic system stretch, well, no amount of alcohol is giving you pleasure. In fact, the dopaminergic levels have started going down. Now, whether you drink alcohol or you don't drink alcohol, you are getting bashed up. that time, many people say that, okay, why don't you try something else? And when that something else releases the other systems, let's say endorphins in the brain, the endorphins, if they are very potent, then they would say, oh, this is much, much, much better than what alcohol was. Now, what has happened is that the person's preference has shifted because now the endorphin system is giving the satisfaction that initially was given by alcohol. And that is the reason why many a times people who have been addicted to one particular drug, after a while, they either choose another drug out of practicality. They cannot afford the first drug, so they would shift the drug to another which is cheaper, or biologically, the ability of the brain to release the satiety chemicals has reached a ceiling. And that's the reason the physical capacity of the brain is reached where it cannot secrete more than what it has already secreted. And that's the reason person chooses to consume some other substance or experiment with some other substance. Whichever gets a hit, he continues with that particular substance. I hope I have answered the question.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ashish. Thank you for joining us. I wanted to talk about the IPL, but we haven't got time for it today.
Well, with whatever that has happened in the last week, I don't want to talk cricket.
No, it's on today. England and India are playing today in the D game.
In fact, I was going to ask you, how is the Portugal and Ireland match?
No, we don't want.
The last minute goal. Come on, life can't be that cruel.
We're unlucky, but thank you very much. And thank you, Bruce, for organising it for us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We have been gifted, and it's an honour to have you and to have you share with us and to have you impart your great knowledge and experience. And God bless you. And thank you for so much for everybody for joining us. God bless you all. Maybe we just finish with the serenity prayer. God grant us the serenity to accept the things we
cannot change,
courage
to change the things we can,
and the
and
wisdom
wisdom to know the difference.
You know, I'm mute now or whatever. God bless you.
Keep
all.
coming back. Keep coming back.